Anupama garu, good morning.
Good morning, Mamta.
Namaste. So, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Good morning.
Hello. Namaste. Sukumar.
So, once again, good morning, good evening, everyone, and namaste. Namaste, Anupama garu, for
Namaste,
the
Mamta.
session. Yeah. And I also see a few of our professors, assistant professors here joining. I think from Bharatanatyam also. Sujata Mohanji is here, and then Divya Sena garu. Namaste to you too. And I see Dr. Katyayani Kanak as well. And if anyone else is here, good morning, good evening. Thanks for joining. And my name is Mamata, and I'm a Faculty and Student Services Director at Aria University. So I do see a lot of our alumni here. So you all know me already. But thank you again for joining. And I just want to start off introducing Dr. Anupama Kailash. Dr. Anupama has trained in Kuchipudi from Dr. Uma Ramarao and is a senior disciple of Padma Bhushan Swapnasundari in Vilasini Natyam. She has been actively performing Kuchipudi for over 20 years and Vilasini Natyam for over 12 years now. She has given over 1,000 performances in India and abroad. After completing her bachelor's and master's in dance, she then went on to do her doctorate in dance from the University of Hyderabad. Anupama is also a Visharda in Hindustani music from the Akhila Bharatiya Gandharva Mahavidyalaya and is an A-graded artist of Doordarshan. She has authored a book titled Nayikas in Kshetriya Padams, which was published by the prestigious Writers' Workshop, Kolkata. She has authored a second book titled Nayikas of Annamacharya, an interpretation for dance, based on her doctoral thesis. Anupama has performed Vilasini Natyam extensively in Seoul, South Korea, and in the United States of America, in cities like Dallas, Houston, and Atlanta. Anupama has been the chief coordinator of the Natyakala Conference 2014 in Chennai, hosted by Sri Krishna Gana Sabha. We are extremely privileged to have Anupama Garu as professor at Aria University since 2017. So welcome Anupama Garu and thank you for this session.
Thank you so much, Mamta. And it's great to have a webinar from our own university. And I welcome everybody. Of course, I would love it if a few of you I can see, but that's completely up to you. Because I feel I will be talking to human beings and not screens, but it's based on your, the possibilities. So today I will be taking, say, 45 minutes to an hour to talk about this subject, which is, of course, when we say Annamacharya, when we say the word Annamacharya, the first thing that comes to mind is volume. Because when you look at Gita Govindam or you look at any of the other works, they are intense works, extremely complex works, but you have 24 songs and 72 shlokas in the Gita Govindam. You have about 600 songs, maybe 700 songs of Kshetriya. But the moment you say Annamacharya, you are confronted with sheer volume. Over 13,500 songs which are available, and probably more than that, more than half of that which are not available to us. So when we are dealing with a poet or a Vagyakara who has composed so prolifically on every possible subject, every possible godhead that is connected to Vaishnavism, then it becomes all the more difficult for us to understand how to understand him or how to interpret him. So today when I said I'm going to talk about emoting to Annamacharya, this even becomes a bigger challenge. And why is it a challenge? We will learn as we go ahead, in the webinar. Because when we look at the different categories of songs, it becomes even more clear to us as to why am I saying that, Annamacharya is a very challenging poet for us to not only just understand, but to interpret also. Having said that, I focus today mainly on the Shingara Sankirtanas or the Shingara compositions of Annamacharya. For the simple reason is that one webinar is not enough for us to cover the entire gamut of his Adhyatma and all his other Sankirtanas as well. So let me concentrate on one aspect, which is, something which is not much explored. Because as you all know, Annamacharya became very popular because of Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams, because of their Annamacharya project and the books they published and the music they released. But that is a temple project. So because of that, it's primarily the devotional songs and the Bhakti Sankirtanas or the Adhyatma Sankirtanas that became extremely popular. But lot of the Shingar Sankirtanas, actually the major bulk of the Shingar Sankirtanas have remained unexplored. So today we will look at some of these categories in a nutshell as much as we can. But before I actually, dive into the subject, I want to read to you one verse which Annamacharya's grandson, himself says. There is a text called the Sankirtana Lakshanam, which is supposed to have been written by Annamacharya. Unfortunately, this text is not available to us, but a Telugu translation of the same is available to us by his grandson, Chinna Tirumalacharya, also known as Chinnanna. Now, in that, he gives you very beautifully, very succinctly, in a small padyam, in a small verse, what is the content of Annamacharya's songs. So I will read the Telugu also for you because the sound of the language is very important, not just the meaning. So he says, Krutulai, Shastramulai, Purana Kathalai, Sugyana Sarambulai, Yati Loka Agama Vidhulai, Vividha Mantrambulai Nitulai, Krutulai, Venkata Shaila, Vallabha Rati Krida Rahasyambulai, Nutulai, Tallapaka Annaya, Vacho Nutna Kriyal Chennagan. What does he mean? He says Annamacharya's songs are mirrors to the tenets of the Shrutis. They are fables steeped in Puranic lore. They are repositories of right knowledge. His songs are streets which are frequented by learned men. They are powerful as mantras. They are profound as wisdom. They are sweet as song and they are intense as eulogy. The wise words of Talapaka Annaya are secrets containing within them the essence of the Sri Venkata Shaila Vallabha's enchanting love play. This is the beautiful verse from Sankirtana Lakshanam by his own grandson, explaining to us what is the rahasya or what is the secret behind the beautiful songs of Annamacharya. So this itself gives us a very clear picture of what all the songs of Annamacharya contain. So today when I say these are songs of love, laughter, loss, it shows us the wide gamut of Shingar Sankirtanas that, Annamacharya has composed. Now, first point. So I have divided this into certain important points so that, we don't meander and we are very much, to the point. Now, the first part of the Shingar Sankirtanas of Annamacharya, which we need to understand, is very much like Jayadeva Kavi in the Gita Govindam. Annamacharya also follows the erotic principle. He uses Shingara, he uses both elements of Shingara, Sambhoga Shingara as well as Vipralambha Shingara, that is love in union and love in separation. He uses both of them very, very evocatively, just as Jayadeva uses Shingara in his Gita Govindam. So the Shingar Sankirtanas of Annamacharya have a largely erotic, many of them are very erotic in content. But having said that, just like Jayadeva, Annamaya Shingara also addresses the divine primarily in most parts. Now, as a temple poet, Annamacharya is a temple poet associated with Tirumala for most of his life. He is one who rejected court patronage. Because of that, you can also say very clearly that he made his Shingara very central to Venkateshwara and Alamelumanga, primarily. Just like Jayadeva made his Shingara central to Radha Krishna. So his Shingara is very steeped in the idea of the divine love between Venkateshwara and Alamelumanga. Now, while the Gita Govindam has connotations which are very deeply religious, based on the Tantra Marga, as well as the esoteric aspects of Shaktism and Shajiya Vaishnavism, Annamacharya was well aware of all these different streams of philosophy. He had Vairagya Sankirtanas, which are deeply philosophical or Adhyatma in nature. And he also infuses them with layers of Tantra, references, and yogic practices. Now, I don't have the time to go into that element very deeply because my concentration is on the Shingar Sankirtanas. But let me suffice to say that simply by using very, very encoded Shingara ideas, he brings out to us very yogic practices. Like, just to give you a small example, in a work called Shingara Manjari, which is composed by Annamacharya, which many people don't know about, there is a sequence where Alamelumanga and all her Sakhis conduct a Madana Puja or a Manmadha Puja or a puja to the god of love. Now, all the descriptions are extremely Shingara based. He talks about how the beautiful flowers have been plucked by the Sakhis and how this altar is prepared by them to establish Madana, this altar of moonlight, how they made, a canopy of champa or sampangi flowers, and they drew the beautiful snake in front of it. Now, on the surface, all these descriptions feel like they are just, very beautiful wordplay connecting us to the Shringara Rasa. But actually, if you look deep into each of these, they are deeply yogic connotations. Because drawing a snake against the wind is actually referring to the rise of the Kundalini. Because as your Kundalini rises, the breath becomes very, very faint. It becomes fainter and fainter. So drawing it against the wind is a very yogic principle. Making a canopy of sampangi flowers is also an extremely philosophical idea, and mounting this canopy on arrows is even more a philosophical idea, because the idea of shara or arrow means breath. The breath is also called shara. So when you say he's mounting a canopy of sampangis, the champa flower is supposed to be a bee repellent. It repels bees. So the bees become the sensory perceptions. Now you create a canopy around yourself which repels the senses, and your breath is always rising upward. This is the whole connotation of that Shingara, idea. So this is just one example of how he encodes the yogic principles within the Shingara. But at the same time, there are many, many pure Sambhoga Shingara and pure Vipralamba Shingara ideas which he explores, which are very human in nature also. I will slowly come to that. Now, one important thing we all need to know about Annamacharya is, unlike the later Pada Sahitya poets in Telugu, Annamacharya states everything in the Pallavi. Okay? At the time of Annamacharya, there was no Anupallavi in the song. You have only Pallavi and Charanams. Anupallavi evolved after the 15th century. So you have just the Pallavi, which is the opening refrain, and then you have the Charanams. Now, if you look at Annamacharya's Pallavis are a research study in themselves. Because everything he will state in the Pallavi. That is, he gives you the entire gist of what his song means or what his song is going to say in the Pallavi. In the Charanams, he expands on the idea and keeps fleshing it out by using multiple comparisons, descriptions, very, very beautiful analogies, metaphors, paradoxes. He fleshes them out in the Charanam. The Charanam actually doesn't say anything new except enhancing whatever the Pallavi has already said. Like, for example, let me give you a few Pallavis here. So, in one Pallavi, he says, Poddika nennadu podachuno, పోయిన చెలి రాదాయ్ నిదుర కంటికి దోపదు నిమిషము ఒక నేడు. Now everything is said over there. I don't know when it will become morning. The Sakhi I have sent has not yet come back. I am unable to sleep for even a minute. Every minute feels like an year. Okay, this is the statement he makes in the Pallavi. Now, if you actually look at the song, that's it. He has said everything that he wants to say. So what is he doing in the Charanams? He's basically enhancing the idea by saying how she's unable to sleep, what situation her eyes are in, what her body is feeling, what her mind is thinking. So he just keeps fleshing it out throughout. Now, any of his Pallavis, if you see, Talachina dehamu niluvadu, ta nanu talachuno talachado, valanuga chelimaatalu vini vatsuno rado. Already everything is said. He says, when I think of him, I cannot hold still, she says. Tananu talal, I don't know whether he thinks of me or not. Valanuga chelimaatalu vini. I've sent this Sakhi who's supposed to speak to him very conducively. Listening to her words, will he come or will he not come? So what is the central idea in the mind of the Nayika is already declared in the Pallavi. There's nothing more to say. Then he keeps enhancing the idea. This particular song I'll expand a little later when we talk about emoting to Annamacharya. So he just gives you the, just like even in his Sanskrit Sankirtanas, which Shringar Sankirtanas in Sanskrit. For example, let me give you one. He says, Sakalam he sakhi janami, tat prakata vilasam paramam dadhase. So, what is the Sakhi saying? She's saying, hey, my dear friend, I know everything. Sakalam he Sakhi, I know everything that you're feeling. Prakata vilasam, the acts that you're committing, alamelumanga, paramam dadhase, they have a paramartha, they have an inner meaning. So therefore, I'm able to gauge your mental condition by looking at your acts, she says. And so how does he enhance the charanams then? So she says, you are smearing dark mrugamada, your musk, you're smearing that on your forehead because the one who has a body like a dark cloud, is in your heart. That is why you're putting black mrugamada on your forehead. Then she says, you lie sideways with your hand with your cheek held on your palm. I know why you're lying like that. Because the one who lies on the snake, Ahinayaka Shayana, he is resting in your thoughts. So that is why you are lying like that. So you see, like a very, intricate sculptor, he just keeps carving ideas into the central point. Now, I want to say one thing here. This is a great influence of Jayadeva on Annamacharya. Because this is Jayadeva's system. We must remember that Annamacharya is the first of the Padasahitya poets. There was no Padasahityam in Telugu before Annamacharya. So where does he get his inspiration in Padasahityam? I will unequivocally say that he is deeply influenced by Jayadeva. Because if you just take a small look at what Jayadeva does, you can see that he uses the exact same methodology. In fact, during the period of Jayadeva, even the word Pallavi was not in existence. Okay, so there is one line in every Jayadeva song where you will see the word Dhruvam written at the corner. Dhruvam is the refrain. Dhruvam is what became the Pallavi later. So that is the word that is a line that will repeat. That is why it's called the Dhruvam. Now, if you see later, this is the Gita Prabandha structure that Jayadeva follows. In later centuries, Sarangadeva, when he wrote the Sangita Ratnakara, he included all these Gita Prabandha structures in it. And this Dhruvam, you will see that in the Dhruvam, even Jayadeva states everything in the Dhruvam. Like, for example, the very famous Ashtapadi, Yahi Madhava Yahi Keshava, Mavada Kaitava Vadam, Tamanusara Sarasiruhalochana Jatava Harati Vishadam. What more is there to say? He has said everything there. Radha is saying, hey Madhava, hey Keshava, why are you arguing with me? Why don't you go? Why don't you go to that woman who makes you happy, who removes your vishada, who removes your sorrow? God, go there. So he has already declared it in the Pallavi. So what is he doing in the Charanams? There are 8 Charanams. What does he do? He keeps building on it. So she says, you are, your body is as dark as your heart. Kajjala Malina, Vilochana. So she goes on. She goes on building on the central idea of, why are you arguing with me? Go to that other woman. She keeps building on that idea. Anything, even when Krishna comes to Radha, he says, Priye charushile munchamai manama nidanam sapadi madananalo dahati mama manasam dehi mukap kamala madhupanam. That's it, he said everything. The reason why he's come to her is, put your mana aside, do not torment me. Please forgive me for whatever you think I have done. That's it, it's put there. But the charanam keeps expanding intricately. It's like a filigree. He keeps filling in the beautiful points throughout the charanams. So this is a technique that Annamacharya has definitely been influenced by Jayadeva. The way you fill the literature into the existing idea. Now, the next point, okay, this is about the Pallavis of Annamacharya. The next point here, which is something that is very typical to Annamacharya as a Telugu poet, is his songs are extremely wordy. They have lots of words and extremely descriptive also. He fills his songs with simile, metaphor, analogy, image, motif, and paradoxes. Now, having said that, it leaves very little, therefore, for us to read into for the Abhinaya. When the line is very simple, the dancer can use her own interpretation and imagination to fill the ideas. But when the poet is only saying everything, then what does the dancer do? Are you going to Google Translate? That's a word I always use. Like, are you going to just keep repeating through your actions the same thing that the poet has said? Literature is a different art form. Dance is a different art form. So what are you going to do to enhance what the poet has already said? Now, when you have a poet like Annamacharya, where he uses extremely wordy and very, very descriptive phrases, so here, how do we enter into the padam of Annamacharya for Abhinaya? So therefore, it is very necessary for us to create a parallel narrative. Looking at the subtext, looking at what the poet is not saying, rather than what the poet is saying. So that we accommodate not just the denseness of the lyric, but also we have to manage to go beyond the lyric here. I will explain this a little later when, I kind of look at another song in the context of poetic elaboration. So this is the second point. His songs are extremely descriptive. So we need to use a special faculty to be able to enter into it, to be able to create Abhinaya for it. Now the next point about his love songs. Annamacharya actually very rarely brings in a worldly social or historical context in his love songs. There are not much references to this. Like, for example, if you see a Kshetraya Padam, he may bring in a social context where he says, the Sakhis are saying, Chudare adi nadache hoyalu. Look at the way that woman is walking and going to her lover. Oh, Attinti Kodalu. She's the daughter-in-law of a very, uh, good house. She's this, she's that. So it's pretty judgmental of this woman who's kind of, leaving. She says, oh, her husband is so powerful. He's so this, but she's going. Now, you find this in some places in Annamacharya, but whenever Annamacharya uses human relationships or he uses the context of these, ma, atta, mogudu, pella, all these words, these relationships, he uses them either as emotional connections to create a repartee, like, like a dialogue between a Bava Mardi, or a dialogue between two brothers, which he uses for Lakshmana and Rama in many places. He doesn't bring it to a very worldly human element. And what is most interesting is he uses human relationships also to show them as obstacles in the path of the Naika to go to the final destination, who's Venkateshwara. So he very beautifully uses them as that. Like he says in an Abhisarika, he says she wanted to go. The cuckoo on the mountaintop was calling to her. So he uses the word cuckoo for Venkateshwara. The dark jet black cuckoo, he juxtaposes the idea with Venkateshwara and he says he was calling from the mountaintop and she wanted to go. But at every point, on one side were her father-in-law and mother-in-law. That is one attachment, one connection. Then he says, Kondavale Maradunde. Like a mountain, her brother-in-law was in her path. Then her husband was in her path. Then finally, the child, which is the highest of human attachments, that was stopping her. So he uses these relationships as attachments or worldly pressures, which stops the devotee or stops the Naika from going towards the destination, who is, it stops the seeker from going to the thing that he's seeking. So in that context, he uses worldly connections, which is very interesting. Unlike the other poets, because a lot of the poets wrote on a very human plane. So in Jayadeva, there is no reference at all to anything social. But in Annamacharya, it is there, but it's very muted and it's very, he couches it, he uses it very cleverly. Primarily as that which lies between the seeker, the devotee, and the ultimate power. He uses all these as obstacles for that. And the next point is Annamacharya. See, I think most Telugu poets, actually, I won't say only Annamacharya, there's a huge element of humor, which Telugu poets infused. Telugu itself, it has a very dry and a very interesting wit. The Telugu language is infused with it. So Annamacharya uses immense elements of humor, and his Nayikas are no docile, quiet, simpering Nayikas. No, Annamacharya's women are extremely audacious, very, very sassy, and they speak their mind. Even Sita of Annamacharya, whom we have always looked at as a very docile, very, quiet Nayika, throws challenges at Rama when you look at Annamacharya's compositions. Now, that's why I said songs of laughter also, because the Nayikas of Annamacharya are very interesting if you look at how he infuses humor. Let me give you a couple of examples. There is one song in which the wife comes to this other woman whom she accuses of keeping her husband in her house. So she comes and she says, the wife's role is not mentioned in the song. But here the other woman cleverly says, she says, Kannavaride kada kandikudu mannamata. So she says, the one who sees the sweet, isn't that the one who gets to eat it? So the one, if that sweet is lying there in front of you, you will get to eat it, right? So she says, the one who sees it, she says, you know this such a simple truth? that, when something is there, something is meant for me, something is fated for me, obviously it's going to come to me. So she says, you come and you bang on my door and you say that, I have your Lord Venkateshwara here with me. But she says, but do you realize he's God? Devara varamiste terakadu pujari. She says, who is the pujari to stop the boon that is coming from God itself? Okay, so extremely sassy. Okay, and then there is one song in which all the Sakhis are, kind of doing they are kind of justifying everything that the Nayaka does. So they say, Dandanunna chelula mindaramu sakshi, nindu dora itaniki neramemi ledu. So this woman is saying, I am not letting him into my house. So they say, Are, we are all there. We are all the Sakhis are there. We are the witness. This man is a very, Nindu Dora. He's such a great lord. He has absolutely no faults, absolutely nothing. You're completely mistaken. You need to let him inside. Okay. And if you look at it almost as a reply, I found another song where the Naika says, oh, okay, he's that great, is it? So she says, she tells the Sakhi, she says, Pachchada mandukore, padalu kadagare. She says, go run and, take the cloth and go and wash his feet. Why don't you all just go run and wash his feet? Rachasesi vachinadu ramanudu. This man has done many, many great things and he has come. It's very sarcastic. So she says, oh, big hangama he did and came, na? Go, run, go and wash his feet. Gatsula dura kure, gakkana pita pettare, net cellula kaidandato nilichi unnadu. So she says, don't keep gossiping. Go and quickly put a stool or something for him there. Because the man is unable to stand. He's standing with the support of the Sakhis. So you see how she's just demolishing him there and then. So this kind of humor is so typical to Annamacharya. And there are multiple examples like this, where he uses tremendous elements of humor to bring out the most audacious ideas. I will look at a few more a little later. Now, having said this, okay, the other aspect, the songs of loss, the songs of pain, if we look at, for a male poet of the 15th century, unbelievably nuanced and subtle his songs are, especially while dealing with the sensitive emotions of the woman's innermost feelings of love. He's so sensitive that you even wonder, how does a male poet, get into the psychology and the emotionality of a woman's mind so beautifully. There is one song where he says, Davvula virahamopa deggari guttunu nera, puvu vantidi namati, buddhulinka cheppare. Now, what does it mean? So here the Naika is telling her friends, she says, Davvula vira, I cannot bear the separation of being far from him. Daggari guttunu nera, but I am not so smart as to understand the secret of how to get close to him. Puvvu vantidi namati, my mind is like a delicate flower. So all my friends, now you please coach me and tell me what should I do. Now here he plays with dichotomies. Annamacharya is a master of dichotomy. He plays with these dichotomies. No, she says, Pakkana navvite pantanaku velitayya. She says, if I burst out laughing, then I appear to be not very sturdy or not very strong in my resolve. So she says, like if I'm angry with him and he says one thing and I burst out laughing, then that shows that I'm not steadfast enough. Okay, lakkavale karigite lavuchalan. Like lac, which is melted, if I just melt, then I don't have strength of character. But vekkasana penigite, very aggressively, if I go and I entwine with him, vesatalu ghanamo, he may get a little irritated with me. Ekkadanunnado menu, I don't know where my body is. What is it I'm supposed to do? I'm like this in this condition. Please tell me what to do. See how sensitive, the idea is. Now, in the mind you, he's a poet 1408 to 1503, one of the earliest Padasahitya poets. There is one song which really shocked me, and when I was doing my research, I spoke about this to my guide also, to Kamishetty Master Garu. He talks here about a married girl, a married woman. See, polygamy was the order of the day. One man had several wives. Here he expresses the innermost pain of a woman who feels that she is just one amongst the many. It's a very daring thing which you are saying in the 15th century. So here she says, Chesinatte Sesugaka, Cheppedemi, Sesa Pettinatti, Tana Chetiloni Dananu. Now, this Sesa Pettadam in Telugu is the Muhurtam. In Telugu, in the Telugu weddings, many of you will know they put the Jilakara and Bellam on the head. That is actually the Muhurtam. So, this Sesa Pettadam means when I married him, that moment, in that Muhurtam that I married him, I became somebody who's in his hands. So let him do whatever he wants, she says. And the descriptions that she uses here was really surprising. It is so beyond the times, in which Annamacharya talks. So she says, Kudina tana satulalo gumpulalo dananu. She says, I'm one amongst the big crowd of women that he has with him. She says, Kuppaga posina tana koluvuloni dananu. This is even more a painful description. She says, I'm one amongst that heap that is poured in his koluvu. Look at the nuance. Iyadata pavalinche intiloni dananu. She says, I am the one who sleeps in the same house as him. So there is a complete detachment, a vairagya, and a kind of a disgust at this position or the situation in which she's in. That is something very, very unusual, to find in a poet of the 15th century, that much nuance of emotion, especially delving into the very, very depths of the woman's heart, feeling her dissatisfactions, feeling her angst. This is very, very special. Now, the next point here is the grandeur of expression. I've always said that when you listen to the songs of Annamacharya, it is like watching a screenplay, a very well-made screenplay. It's like getting into that. See, a simple Viraha song is never simple with Annamacharya. Like, for example, in one song, he says, Valapula daadi vache vanitalara, marundu elagoleyaga juche elage. Now, Valapula daadi vache. Love is coming like an attack, like a siege. Marundu elagolu. This elagolu is a very typical word Annamacharya uses. The word elagolu means to beat the drum, to declare war. So before a war, they say elagolu veyadam. That is to, blow the trumpets and to beat the drum. So she says, Madana is beating the drum. He is declaring war on me. Now, after that, when you see the descriptions that unfold, it is like you're watching a movie. She says, Turupunan podiche chandurudu. On the moon arose in the east. It's like as if he's carrying the weight of the entire sky on him. And then he says, the moon started showering moonlight, which is like fire. And how did he do this? He kept grabbing handfuls of moonlight and throwing it around. So you see the, imagination. Now, Parutenche Virahula Bandikadu, the one who is a captor of the Virahinis, he's secretly moving everywhere. He's sprinkling moonlight. He's coming with the winds of the Malaya mountains. So this grandeur you find in Jayadeva also. This is something you will not find this grandeur in the later Telugu Pada poets. The later Telugu Pada poets become very, very human, and it becomes a very emotional, psychological, idea. But Annamacharya's expanse is very vast. Like he looks at nature and emotion, he juxtaposes the two, just like Jayadeva does. Now, even in many other ways also there is grandeur. Like, for example, in one song, the Sakhi tells the Naika, she says, Etuvanti mohamo inti nipai ataniki. What kind of love does this man have for you? Tatukkuna uramuna dharinche ninnu. In 1 second, he put you on his heart. Okay? Tatukkuna, the word itself means instantly. He just placed you on his heart. And then she says, she gives many descriptions, and she says, Bhamini, ni nadatalu gajagamanamulani. Because you walk like a gaja, kaminchi ni pati karigachenu. Says he did Gajendra Moksha only because he's reminded of your walk. Because you walk like an elephant, he went and rescued that elephant. And then he continues to describe it in that manner. He says, he's holding a chakram because he's reminded of your rounded hips. He is blue-black because your hair is black. Your tresses are black. He lives on mountains because your bosoms are like mountains. So he goes on expanding. Now he uses this technique in multiple songs. For example, he says, Maruni balamulella maguvaku chuttale. All the powers of Madana are actually friends to the Naika. So this man can't do anything. He can never create viraha between you and Venkateshwara because you have already mastered everything that this man has as attendants. So beautifully he explains, he says, when you speak, parrots come. Your bosoms are like two chakravaka birds. Your palms are like lotuses, which are surrounded by bees. When you walk, peacocks follow you. When you gaze upon the face of Venkateshwara, it is like the moon. So chakoras come towards you. And when you even speak, it's like you're singing. It's like koyals, they come towards you. So look at the way he gives the vista. The canvas of the song becomes very big with Annamacharya. Okay, so there are, and Dashavatara connotations, there are multiple. But in the interest of time, now we'll just go into the different methodologies of how we can emote to these songs. Now, before I end the descriptions of the songs, there are all kinds of songs in the Shringar Sankirtanas of Annamacharya. You have festivities, you have Utsava Sampradayas, you have songs on processions of the gods, you have folk elements where the girls from the Chenchu tribe who live somewhere in the forests of Ahobilam, there are many songs in which the Chenchu girls address Venkateshwara. And they say, I am after all a tribal girl, why will you come to me? That kind of thing. Beautiful songs. Now, why these Chenchu references are coming? Because Annamacharya is very closely associated with Ahobilam also, the Narasimha Kshetra of Ahobilam, because his guru, Shatakopa Muni, is from Ahobilam. And he initiated Annamacharya in the Narasimha mantra. So Annamacharya is very deeply connected with Ahobila Kshetra also. So there are many songs connected to the Chenchu tribe or the Chenchu women. We have the famous legend that Chenchu Lakshmi was, Lakshmi in the form of the tribal girl, was the one who calmed Narasimha down and married him later. So this Chenchu idea is there very much in his songs, and his in Shringar Sankirtanas have many of these elements. So you have folk elements, you have mention of dance, music, ritual. The very famous Allarulu Kuriyagar Adinade, Tiro Tiro Javarala, Upacharinchagarada, Uvida Kadunalase. So she's telling him, she says, why don't you go and attend to her? She's very tired after dancing so much. So there are many references to dance, music, musical instruments. Kinnera meeti meeti, he says. So there's any reference to the kinnera, or this very, kind of a folk instrument, which is like a cross between a sarod and the sitar. It has two strings, and so he refers to all of this in the Shringara. Now, the array of songs gives us ample scope to expand not only on the context, the content, and the core of these songs, but I also discovered another set of approaches which I have generally understood as possibilities. Okay, so this is the last part of my section where I want to talk about three approaches that are possible for Abhinaya for a poet like Annamacharya. Now, these three approaches can be applicable to most Sahityam actually. But here I'm using it in the context of Annamacharya because of the vastness and the variety of his songs. So I have good examples for each of them because of the scope of Annamacharya's songs. Now, what are these three methods which I've kind of defined? One is the dramatic or the theatrical method or a storytelling method, which is narrative in nature. Two is what I call the literary or the poetic method. And the three is what I call the affective method. Now, let me explain these. Of course, there can be a fourth method where you can say, to hell with all these methods, I will do whatever I want method. Okay, that is also a possibility. Because at the end of the day, Abhinaya, literature, emotion is very, very subjective and personal to everybody. So now you can say, put all your methods aside, I will just do whatever I want to do, which is also a very effective method. But why am I then having a method at all? This analysis of these three methods, it is purely to understand which type of literature requires which kind of an approach. It's purely to understand that. Now, in order to do most effective justice to the nuances being displayed by the poet, what is the method that we can take to do maximum justice to that poet, especially a poet like Annamacharya? Because the words are so complicated, the phrases are so eloquent, that I thought these approaches will help us to get an entry into the songs. Okay, so the first is the theatrical or the dramatic approach. Now, this is what we mostly do in Kuchipudi, even today. Essentially, it's a theatrical or a storytelling tradition, Kuchipudi. So that's why this method is easier when the literature is, a eulogy or it is incident based. Like, say, the very famous song, Deva Devam Bhaje Divya Prabhavam Ravana Suravairi Ranapunghavam Ramam. Now, this is simple. When you say Ravana Suravairi, you can show the Ravana Yuddha, you can show different incidents because this is a direct eulogy of Rama where you get a multiple entry to show Dhanurbhanga, this, that, anything, Yagarakshana, because all these are words that occur in silos in the song. But here we are not talking about Purana Itihasa based songs which just give you a very simple entry into it. Here we are talking about Shringara based compositions. Now, one primary thing for Abhinaya, which everyone, I think all of us need to note in our head is the sthai. The primary emotion running through the piece is tantamount. That is the most important thing. What is the sthai and how do we enter it? Now, Kudiyattam exponents spend hours just gazing at a spot just to establish the sthai. The character who plays Ravana in Kudiyattam looks at the Kailasha mountain for 1 hour and doesn't lift it. Why does he not lift it? Because he is looking at the exact point where he wants to lift this imaginary mountain. Why do they do that? Are they crazy? No. They understand how important sthai is to be able to enter into the abhinaya of a piece. Now here in the Shringara Sankirtanas, the sthai is rati. It is Shringara, it is love. So every other bhava occurs in the context of rati. So when you are unfolding a story or a narrative, it also has to begin and it has to end with the primary sthai that is there in the song. Like, for example, Sita tells Rama in one song, Rasikuda Tirupati Raghuvira, Kosaru Kadu Nalo Kurimulugani. So she says, oh, great Rama, my love for you is not small. It is not that little extra. It's the actual thing. It's the main thing. But, your challenge is with me. So here she says two things. She says, వెలయు నీవు విరిచిన విల్లు వంటిది కాదు విలసిల్లు నా బొమ్మల విండ్లు గాని. So she says, this is not that bow that you broke. These are the bows of my eyebrows. It's difficult for you to deal with it. Okay, and in another description, she says, she says, taga neevu gelichina danuja yuddhamu kaadu. Tagatodi na madana yuddhamu gani. So she says, this is not the Danuja Yuddhamu or the Rakshasa Yuddham that you fought. This is the Madana Yuddha that you have to fight with me. Now, many incidents from the Ramayana are being described here. But here, it is not for you to jump and do the entire Dhanurbhangam scene, or it is not for us to go and do this entire elaborate war scene, because the sthai there is Rati. So even the storytelling or the narrative has to follow the pattern of Shingara. So you have to use the storytelling not as a dramatic principle, but as a narrative which will give you entry into the sthai of Rati. So you can expand on the idea of the eyebrows rather than on the Dhanurbhanga idea. So this is one of the, in the interest of time, I'm just giving one example. So this is one aspect of the storytelling. Now the literary or the poetic approach, this is very much used in the female dancing traditions because it is more alankara or decoration based. Now sometimes there are instances where the literature is so ornate and it's already so descriptive that we as dancers, we need an opening to enter into the text to create a parallel narrative, which helps us to interpret the already dense text. Okay, now delicate ideas, sometimes they're not particularly telling a story, but they are building a very subtle imagery and comparison. And Annamacharya Shingara Padams are filled with this. Like the song I mentioned before, Talachina Dehamu Niluvadu, Tananu Talachino, I don't know whether he thinks of me or not. But I cannot stay still when I think of him. Now, in this context, he uses a very beautiful line. She says, when the drop of musk in the heat, it fell on my cheek. Venkateshwara, who has so much passion for me, came charging like a bull. But with the tip of his finger, he just flicked the drop away. Now, this is where the dichotomy. When you come charging, but at the same time, you're soft when you reach up. Now, this is a poetic approach we have to use. So I just give you a couple of ideas. Like, here we have to go beyond the text. So she says, Uravadi diviyuchu kona gorudina chandamulu. So he comes like a turbulent wave, but he becomes just lapping water near the cheek. He comes like a chakra, but he becomes like a soft padma near the cheek. He comes like a whirlwind, but he becomes a gentle breeze near the cheek. He comes like a lion, but he becomes gentle as a cow near the cheek. This is a poetic approach. You're not telling a story, you're building ideas. Now the last method, before Mamta shouts at me, so the last method is the affective methodology. Now this is something I found very interesting while researching. In psychiatry, affective refers to the observable expression of emotion through facial expression, body language, and vocal tone as perceived by others. It is essentially how a person's emotional state is displayed or expressed outwardly. Now, this helps us to understand the mood and the overall responsiveness. Now, in Abhinaya, this is very, very important aspect. Instead of responding to actual life situations as you would in psychiatry, you are responding here to emotional context created by the poet. within the lines of the literature. Now, this is a kind of method that we can use for Kshetraya or the other Pada poetry also, which focus more on human love and interaction. In this context, it is neither necessary for that a story is narrated, nor is it necessary that there is an embellishment of the idea using motive, simile, or metaphor. Here, only the psychological, emotional responses of the protagonist is primary. It is deeply personal, deeply emotional. It's a thought process where the sattvika bhavas, an emotionally charged movement, is long drawn out with minimal need for any kind of decorative elements. Like in Annamacharya, the Nayika says, Chalu chalu vadu leni janma mela. I don't want a life in which he's not there. Here, you don't have to tell elaborate stories. You don't have to do great alankara embellishments. You have to stick to the sthai of her pain and her despair. Here, the emotionality is more important than anything else. The Sakhis are telling Venkateshwara, Teliyadevvarikini Deva Devesha, none of us are understanding. Aa nelata bhavam vella neeva only you can understand her emotions. And they say, she stands, she shakes her head, she cries, and she wipes the tears away. She feels dizzy. She thinks a lot. She horripilates. She walks rapidly from here to there, shaking her head. So we don't understand all this. Only you can, solve this problem. Now, in such a song, we don't need elaborate storytelling. We need to get into the deeply emotional responses of the Naika. So this is the, after putting forward these basic idea of these three approaches, I want to say one thing in conclusion. It is not that these modes or these modalities exist in silos or in isolation. They cannot. They are interdependent, also intertwined sometimes. A narrative method can also carry deep emotional nuance. An emotional idea may be expanded using narrative or decorative elements. The important thing is when we look at individual compositions of literature, as we do in Padabhinaya, these approaches, they can just provide us a clarity of vision as to how to step into the sthai and where the sthai needs to be anchored. It gives us a direction of how we can set the context, the content, and the core of the idea. While all the time we are negotiating multiple ways of viewing the same thing. Annamacharya is a Vagyakara who creates multitudes of and vastly different diverse scenarios. But the one underlying idea that definitely anchored him is his constant dialogue with and devotion to Alamelumanga and Venkateshwara Swami. So that is his primary thing, and Shingara was his thigh in most of the compositions. So, yeah, in the interest of time, that's all I can expand upon. Thank you so much for, attending this. And I have a lot more to say on Annamacharya, but that's for another rainy day. Want to say that, Aria University has been conducting these webinars now for a few years, and we've had really good response for these. As you all know, Aria is a non-profit, it's a accredited American university. And we are very, very, happy that we have a very interesting array of subjects that we, talk about in certificate, in our diploma programs, in our master's programs. And we have some very diverse subjects like, we are the only university that actually has a complete course on Tala, primarily on Tala, which in the master's level and also at the certificate level. And we look at every aspect of the theory of dance, not only from the performative, but from the ethnographic, from the historical, from the social perspective, from the humanitarian perspective. We have tried to bring in all these elements in our courses. And, it would be lovely to interact with some of y'all in the courses, so the certificate program gives you a lot of practical training. The master's is designed to give you choreographic elements, textual traditions, we explore a lot of the texts, multiple texts. We look at movement, meaning, representation, abhinaya, multitude of things. So, we have also given you the numbers of course, Mamta and Sridevi and all our, go-to people. For any of you who would be interested in kind of, even knowing more about our courses, be wonderful if you could contact us or, send us your numbers. Those of you who know me personally, you can even send me your number and, we could talk to you a little more about our courses. So yeah, I want to leave it open for question answers. You can ask me questions on what I've spoken about or even about our university. You're most open to ask us about anything. So do go ahead. I know, like, I went like a horse on steroids, but I can't help it because that's the time I have. So do unmute or, just ask me whatever you want to ask me. No questions means either you didn't understand anything or you understood everything. So you decide.
Ma'am, so I'm just starting into, starting with Kuchipudi pieces and, but I'm a vocalist. So music is something
Right.
that has stayed with me since the age of 3. So understanding emotions in music and modulations even while singing is something that I feel that dance can emote as well. So
Yes.
when it comes to Annamacharya or Jayadeva or be it Swadhitirna or Kritis, there's always that romance which is very innocent as well.
Hmm.
So so how do we connect different poets in different ways? For example, when we talk about Tyagaraja, we know that there is a signature of Tyagaraja in every song or
Hmm.
be it Purandara Darsa, he will always have a signature Purandara Vithala in every song. So how do we differentiate that for an Annamacharya or any other poet dealing with romance?
So with Annamacharya, it's very clear because his mudra is Venkatapati or Venkateshwara. So he uses, and not only Annamacharya, his son, his grandsons, the entire Talapaka poet community have only used Venkatapati as a mudra or Venkateshwara as a mudra. And with most poets, you can actually see, especially in Padasahityam, Telugu Padasahityam, rather than their names, you will see the signature primarily of the main deity of the place that they are associated with. Like if Kshetraya belongs to the Mugva village, you will see Mugva Gopala as his title. If you see Sarangapani, who's associated with the Karveti Nagaram Venugopala Swami temple, so he will have Venugopala as his mudra. Even the modern Javali, even the most recent, like Dasu Sri Ramulu, he used to write for a place called Totla Valluri. So he will use Totla Valluri Rajagopala, which is the primary deity there. So most of them, their mudras were always associated to that place to which they kind of, belong. So that is primarily how even Swati Tirunar, he uses Padmanabha. So Padmanabha is the Padmanabha Swami temple in Kerala. The royal family used to run that temple, right? And they still do. So it is all about that. So you will see Jayadeva, and they also use it very nuanced. Even if their name comes, you don't know whether it's their name or it's the deity. When Jayadeva says Jayadeva, you don't know whether he's saying Jayadeva to Vishnu. When Tyagaraja says Tyagaraja, you don't know whether he's talking about the Tyagaraja of Tiruvarur, to where he was born, or whether he's talking about himself. So they use it very cleverly. Mudras. Okay, folks, tell me any other questions that are coming up? Anything that comes to your mind, please unmute. It's absolutely fine. You can ask me.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
We are saying Sringara Sankirtanas.
Yes.
So, when there are compositions related to erotism or Sringara, can we
Hmm.
call them as Sankirtana or do we call
See,
something else?
so Now, this is a very interesting and a very good question actually, because it is only in the modern times that we have created a differentiation based on the emotionality or the genre-based difference. Now, but if you look at anything which is a song format, that is anything which has a pallavi, anupallavi and charanams, basically it is all padasahityam. Now, it is interesting that Annamacharya's grandsons themselves have used the word padam and sankirtana almost like, synonymously. In many places, they call it Annamaya Padamulu. In many places, they call it Annamaya Sankirtanam. Now, they've used the word Sankirtanam also because at the end of the day, whether it is erotic, whether it is primarily Shingara, whether it is Sambhoga, it is a Kirtana of Venkateshwara. It is a eulogy to Venkateshwara and Alamelumanga. Now, when it comes to human love, like Kshetraya, they don't use the word Sankirtana synonymously with Padam there, because it is simply Padasahityam, because it is primarily only Shingara based. Now, this dichotomy of Kriti, Kirtana, Padam, Sankirtana, all this has come in later times when music developed as a separate genre, and music, dance, theatre were all not one. When music evolved as a separate genre, then this whole idea of Kriti, and even Tyagaraja uses Kriti and Kirtana synonymously in many places. So we have created this dichotomy. Practitioners of music and dance have created the dichotomy, but it actually doesn't lie in the literature. In Sankirtana Lakshanam, you will see that Chinnanna uses Annamaya Padamulu, Annamaya Sankirtana. He uses both the words. Because basically what we need to understand is anything that is a song format is a pada. Whether it is an Ashtapadi, whether it is a Sankirtana, whether it is a Kirtana, whether it is Bhajana Sampradaya, whether it is Shringara literature, everything comes under Pada Sahitya. So we can call it a Sankirtana even if it's Shringara. You can call it a Padam even if it is not Shringara. Vairagya Padamulu, he says. So Vairagya Padam, anything that is a composition is a Pada. A song composition is a Pada. So they can absolutely be used interchangeably. There is no doubt about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely that answers my question. And as you said, few compositions doesn't even refer to a god. It's
Yes.
just a Nayaka or a Nayika.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
So
that is
thank you
all
so much.
Pada Sahitya. In fact, I think even
True.
Javadi is Pada Sahitya because this is all song format. It comes under the genre of Pada Sahitya. It is only the emotional quotient that is making us differentiate, which is also not required, because many times when I perform the Shringara pieces of Annamaya, I don't even call it Sankirtan. I call it Annamaya Padamulu.
Perfect.
So it can be interchangeable, absolutely.
Yeah, and most of the compositions of Annamacharya are more related to, rasa. I mean, mostly Sringara oriented.
Yes. A lot of them. See, like Jayadeva, it is rasa based, it is emotion based, but it is deep erotic Shringara, which has an underlying element of the transcendental, because the Shringara is occurring between Venkateshwara and Alamelumanga primarily. Just like the Shringara of Gita Govindam is occurring between Radha and Krishna. So there is a deeply transcendental and a deeply, divine quality to the Shringara, which you don't find in later Pada Sahitya, which is absolutely fine. So now, as dancers, first thing we need is honesty. We need to see if there is a spiritual or a philosophical vein running through the Shringara, we should not ignore it. But if there is no spiritual or philosophical vein running through the song, then we must not pretend that there is. That is also important. When you look at a Javali, it's a human interaction. Here, no, if somebody comes and asks me what is the philosophical connotation of a Javali, I'll tell them none. Hey, look, this is human emotion. Don't bring a philosophical element here. So that honesty with which we approach the craft, that is very important. We should not ignore the philosophical if it is there, and we must not attribute philosophical where it is not there. That is also important, right?
True.
Namaste,
You are
Annapurna
absolutely
ji.
right.
Yes, Prabhaji, yes.
Namaste. Uh, can the Devarnamas are also said as Padams? I have throat infection.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything that has a Pallavi, Anupallavi, and Charanams can be called Padasahitya. Absolutely. Not the Suladis, which Karnataka is
Yes,
very
yes.
famous for.
Yes,
If
yes.
the Devaranamas are in the format of a Suladi, then that is a different format of
Yes.
composition.
Yes, yes.
But anything that is a Padas, even Ashtapadis are actually Padasahityam. That is the first Padasahityam you have in Sanskrit.
Yes, yes.
So, definitely it's Padasahitya.
Thank you, thank you. I have
Again,
throat
this format,
infection.
doesn't apply very much to the North Indian Bhakti poetry or to the Shringara poetry because they've not used the Pada format many places. They use the couplet, the Dvipada, the Doha, or the Chaupai. The 4 lines and the 2-line formats is what they use.
Okay.
So
They
that
don't
cannot be
have.
called Pada Sahityam. Yeah.
They don't have particularly as Pallavi Charanas and
No,
all.
they don't have Pallavi
Yes.
Charanam and Pallavi
Yes.
Anupallavi, 3 Charanams. They don't have that
Yes.
format. It's not a song
Yes.
format.
Yes.
So they use that. So this demarcation is purely based on the format, not on the
Format.
genre. That's what I'm saying. The genre may be anything, like you have in Netflix, no genre, horror, thriller, rom-com. This doesn't decide the idea. The format decides what it is.
Yes.
It can be a comedy song, it can be Shingara, it can be Vairagya, it can still be a Padam. If it has Pallavi, Anupallavi, Charanams.
Right.
It's all in the format. Padyam, Shlokam, Dvipada, Manjari Dvipada,
Yes.
Padasahityam. These are all formats. Metrical formats.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupama Garu. That was such a beautiful, informative session. I did enjoy too, even though I'm not a dancer.
Oh, but you're a singer.
Annamacharya, anytime,
Yeah.
I would want to learn more. So thank you for that. And thank you all for joining. Uh, Please do fill up that tiny URL that I have shared in the chat window. And if we have any more webinars or things like that, we can share that information with you. So you will keep your email ID in the database, and we can share that with you. And if you're interested in any of our programs, do visit aria.edu. You will find all the information, and also have shared admissions at aria.edu email. You can always ask us questions, any doubts that you have, or even call me or reach out to me. On the flyer you have my number. So yeah, thanks once again.
I'm just curious, who is Jayashri? There's some Jayashri's iPhone there.
Jayashri's iPhone, yeah.
Are you a university student or are you there, Jayashri?
No, Andy. My daughter is interested to go, so I just joined for her.
Oh, okay. She's interested in the certificate masters or?
No, Kuchipudi certification.
Oh, okay. Do
Yeah,
contact us.
she's 9th grade.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So for actually for certificate or diploma programs, 9th grade is the eligibility. So if they have successfully completed 8th grade, they can start off a certificate program or diploma based on their experience in Kuchipudi dance, and there'll be an assessment that we will do. So based on that, they'll be placed in one of the programs. So please do reach us out, Jayashri ji. So what is
Sure,
it?
Andy. She's been learning Kuchipudi from the age of 6. So
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Do share your number, Jayashri ji, and we can. If you want more information on the certificate diploma programs, also you can just reach out to us.
Sure,
And
Andy. Yeah.
that
Yeah,
will be
reach
great.
out to us, and you will have more details. You can make a decision for your daughter.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else who's not from the university will be great,
Sujata.
Good morning, Sujata.
Myself and Divya, we are in Coimbatore. They were fully doing. It is very interesting.
Thank you, Sujata ji. Thank you so much.
As always, very informative, and we would like to have more webinars like this from Aria University.
Yes. Sujata Mohanji is also she and Divasena are part of our Bharatanatyam faculty, and we are very happy to have them here. And if any of you are interested in Bharatanatyam, do reach out to us. We can put you on to them, and that will be wonderful. We have a wonderful masters going on in Bharatanatyam as well. Kuchipudi, Bharatanatyam, Hindustani music, Carnatic music. So your Sanskrit, Telugu, you're most welcome to, come to us for any of this.
Correct. Yeah, our roadmap is, even starting PhD as well. So it's not 100% decided yet, but yeah, you will be seeing that as well. So everybody who is a dancer has something to do in our university. So please do reach
Yes.
out to us. You can take up some course or the other and continue your learning journey.
Yes. Do reach out.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mamta.
Yeah, namaste, Anupama garu. Thank you so much. Sujata ji and Divya ji. Thank you.
Bye. Happy to see the alumni also. Bye.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Mamta Garu. Katyayani
Thank
here.
you.
It was great, Anu, hearing
Thank
you.
you.
As
Thank you.
usual. But yeah, it was great.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye. Yeah.